Okay, so here we are again, and this is our fourth session of Visions of Bosnia. So far, we've looked at the pyramid complex in Bosnia and the most important issues that are being discussed about the pyramid complex till this date, and some of the scientific aspects of science in different fields like geology and electrical engineering and physics, biological, etc. Plus, I've been describing how I've interpreted these aspects of Bosnia, or I've been interpreting these aspects of Bosnia into a movie. And it's been a long and arduous road, actually, to discover many very important and interesting and quite in-depth meanings about many different scientific concepts, as well as looking deeply into the nature of mind and spiritual aspects as well. I ended up creating a picture called Crystal of Time, which you can see on the left of this picture here. But now, in this session today, I'm going to describe to you how I started working with this picture, and I started interpreting it in a deeper way, and how it turned out that another picture, this one on the right, just came out of the blue, really. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't, certainly wasn't sort of foreseeing that there would be two pictures involved in this process. But anyway, as you know, it's been a process of following the road the whole way, and the important aspect has been to actually pay attention to every detail that's going on around me in my life, and also to flow very organically with the process, so that I don't miss out any details. But I don't mean neurotically in that sense, but like, you know, following the breadcrumbs, really. And each little piece of information has been helpful in my interpretation of the Bosnian pyramid complex. So this is something we've already touched on before, the Vajra. Now, in the last session, I ended up with my third trip to Bosnia in the June of 2019. And actually, just before I went to Bosnia, I was invited by somebody to come in on a project in London, which was involving the Hevajra Tantra. Quite ironically, because the Hevajra Tantra, as you can see, I wrote here at the bottom of the page, if you can understand the meaning of the Vajra, you can understand the meaning of the whole Tantra. Now, Tantra is quite a misunderstood term, especially in the Western world, where people think that it only has some kind of sexual connotation. But actually, the meaning of Tantra is much wider, in the sense that it means to weave, or it has this sense of unbroken continuity. It spreads the whole of existence from this weaving through the whole of existence through each dimensional state. So in the Hevajra Tantra, it mentions that the meaning of the secret meaning of Vajra is that the Vajra is the symbol of the true mind of pure awareness. This is the secret Vajra, the great Vajra of emptiness, which is the essence of our mind since beginningless time. The true Vajra is your own mind, the direct perception of ultimate reality, indestructible emptiness. Now, we could have many sessions on that point itself, but I think that paragraph in itself expresses to you the very depth of the meaning of Vajra. It takes us really to the core of reality, the meaning of our essential nature, this ultimate reality of indestructible emptiness. The inner Vajra is mentioned as the teacher who represents this inner aspect. He or she is the one who guides you on this path to this perception of ultimate reality. And then the outer Vajra is the actual ritual object, this object you see here on the left, and the effect it causes within the outer and inner environments. So I think the important point here is that not that you just pick up this object per se and wave it around and it's going to change the environment. The power itself is not in the object. The power is coming from the source of your own mind. So your mind wielding this object around in certain directions would have the power to shift and to change energies within the environment. So it's got to be connected to that power source of your mind in that sense. There's got to be that a different dimensional layers have got to be in alignment in that sense. I thought I'd start off by talking about this today because we've looked at how the crystal of time has this very poignant similarity to the shape of the Vajra. And I've been sure for quite a while now that the crystal of time is some kind of device, obviously not in 2D. I mean, this on the left, this is the 2D, its 2D aspect, as in the picture, but a 3D aspect. So, you know, I'd started already jotting down some ideas as to how it might look in 3 dimension. You can see these kind of donut toroidal shaped circles and spheres and these kind of diamond shaped ends, caps on each end. I mean, is it a transformer of Hertzian waves to non-Hertzian waves? Is it some kind of time traveling tool? And the one that I liked the best, and the one that came very spontaneously to me, was a holistic time healing capacitor. And honestly speaking, I didn't really know what that meant, or I still don't really know what a holistic time healing capacitor may be in actual fact. But the fact that it came to me so spontaneously, I thought that I'll write it down and I'll keep it in mind, and let's see how that may reveal itself as time goes on. Now, at this June 2019 summer solstice conference in Bosnia, where I presented the Crystal of Time, I had been asked also to show my movie on the Bosnian pyramid complex. And in actual fact, I had been through the visuals. I had done some editing. I'd made a plan of how to lay it out, but it just didn't feel right. Something big was missing. And I just, even though it meant that I wouldn't be able to fulfill the request to show the movie at this event, I decided to stop editing. I said, no, I'm not going to compromise with this. It's got to be, when I actually create the movie, it's got to be the right movie in the end. Then you may ask me, well, how will anything ever be right or wrong or good or bad in that sense? And it's not like that. It's just a feeling that I haven't hit the mark yet. So in an email to someone who had offered to make the movie for the movie, as the music for the movie, and this had been in quite an early stage when I'd been laying out, or I hadn't actually completed the Crystal of Time picture yet. I had actually written, I am currently working on the structure of the Bosnian film, which is going to be based on the idea of our consciousness as harmonic resonance, working in octaves within all dimensions of existence, as above, so below. This will be represented by 1 octave of harmonic resonance, a standard format that can be implemented at any octave of existence in a micro-macro way, higher or lower, musically speaking. Having this undertone, I will structure the visuals of the film in 8 sections to reflect the octave. In this way, throughout the movie, we'll be carrying the viewer through a whole octave or his or her consciousness to indicate the progression all highlighted in terms of light, visual, sound, speech, music, tones and semitones, mood, narration, etc., emerging in 8 stages. Then above this base structure, there will also be another layer of meaning, as throughout the movie we'll also be creating a whole emanated being, like a primordial man, whose 8 parts of conscious emanation, the octave, will be rounded off with 1 seed that contains the whole and 1 whole that contains the seed, making up the decad, in other words, 10. So I just wrote this down for you because this is a very initial idea I'd had of how to present the movie. But like I said, when I actually came to editing, I was not satisfied that I was hitting the mark yet. Something was missing and I had to find out what it was before I completed the editing. So right after the Bosnian conference in June 2019, in fact, I flew straight from Bosnia to Victoria, and Dr. Karim had asked me to speak about Crystal of Time at his Biogeometry Special Topics Conference. And he'd in particular asked me to make a special emphasis on the meaning of time as embedded into the picture. Now, this was a new focus for me because as you know from my previous sessions, I've been describing to you how I've been focusing on building the picture itself and interpreting the picture, but not on interpreting its overall meaning. And although time was lodged there in the title, Crystal of Time, I hadn't really been in depth into the meaning of time yet. So this was incredible, actually, that he asked me at this moment to put my focus on time. And I didn't have any particular idea about where to start. But the first thing that I did notice was that we cannot separate time from our own consciousness. So that was like my springboard to start looking at the meaning of time within the picture. And I come back to this connection between perception and awareness. We've looked at this before, but I'm adding a little bit here. So perception is like frames of a movie occurring in order one by one. So in that sense, it can be equated to the Hertzian waves, you know, these sine waves that move from past to present to future, and they require time and effort to move along an axis. Whereas awareness is like the whole movie being played simultaneously. So in that sense, it makes it more like a scalar wave, which pulses instantaneously. In fact, it doesn't even move. It just pulses itself instantaneously everywhere, immediately. So I thought this was these were quite nice analogies for perception and awareness. But as perception drifts further away from its purest state of awareness, so it, and again, I'm using relative terms here, drifts further away. It's not like it's going like that. You know, perception is never separated from awareness. Perception is a quality of awareness, but as it starts to look at itself, it's no longer in its same capacity as awareness. It's now created a relative aspect. And I've said here, so it descends through octaves of harmonic resonance, but it's not like awareness is the top and then it sort of falls down into perception. It means that it starts to create these different layers of itself. So descends, again, is not quite the right word, but it's difficult to put these this image into words, actually. So it descends through different octaves of harmonic resonance, and both of these, perception and awareness, are consciousness operating at different frequencies. So consciousness itself needs to go through a kind of vortex or many vortices, both to become thought and to return to pure awareness. So you've got this idea of going through these kind of wormholes into different dimensional states. Now we've got this this relationship between pi and octaves of harmonic resonance. On the left here, top left here, you'll see this is one octave, or this is a micro of the macro, in a sense, one octave that exists within many octaves. Remember, there's one here and there's one here. the Pythagoreans introduced 2 additional concentrations of resonance at the points of vibrational retardation between the notes mi, fa, and ti, do to make it harmonious. Now, so then instead of being 8, it becomes a 10-tone octave in that sense. But in an original octave, there are 7 original notes in an octave before the 8th repeats itself, the first note, at a higher level. And in DNA, we have 22 pairs of chromosomes of human DNA, where 20 are related to the production of amino acids, and 2 are start and stop the production of amino acids. And the 23rd is in a class of its own that defines female or male. So 3 of these octaves here are 22 notes, 7 times 3 plus 1, which equals 22 over 7, 7 being the original number of notes in an octave, which equals pi, the value of roughly 3.14. Now, pi is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. It doesn't matter how big or small the circle is, the ratio stays the same. Pi is useful for describing everything from the way light and sound waves ripple to the bendiness of rivers, and it even crops up in calculations where circles are nowhere to be seen, such as Euler's identity, which is a probability formula that has been described as the most beautiful in mathematics. Pi is also an irrational number, which means that its value cannot be expressed exactly as a simple fraction. As a result, pi is an infinite decimal, and this is important in maths. It makes it transcendental. So here we have this relationship between pi and octaves of harmonic resonance. And like I've been specifically mentioning, the human DNA. So the 3 main layers, octaves of harmonic resonance, that describe existence, and we've talked about this before as well, are the essence, its blueprint, and manifest reality. So there are 9 octaves here. We can see that the three octaves, the 3 main layers as 3 octaves, emerge as 3 more active, passive, and neutral aspects at an energetic level. So here from 3 octaves, they now emerge as 9 octaves. So each layer has, each of the 3 layers has now got 3 layers within each layer. And these reflect the micro-macro relationships of each of the 3 main layers, making 9 octaves in total. And 7 times 9 is 63. The last note, which is the 10th do, if we call these each of the first notes and last of each, the first and last of each octave is a do. The last note is now the 10th do, which is the 64th note, resembling 64 possible ways in which the ACGT, the 4 nitrogenous bases of DNA, can combine as triple RNA codons that link to existing triple units housed in original DNA molecule. Therefore, DNA is in reality made up from precisely 64 basic biochemical hexagrams, just like the I Ching, the 3,000-plus-year-old Chinese book of changes. So there are many correlations and many ways that humans have been able to use these octaves of harmonic resonance and their intricate meanings in order to display the micro-macro relationships between different layers of our reality. So the genetic code is thus a biochemical manifestation of the Hermetic code. Now, this is going to figure, in fact, in our next session, where I'm going to be describing to you a very in-depth meaning or decoding of the Hermetic code in terms of electrical energy and how it relates to our essential nature. So I want to leave that there as a seed for the time being. The genetic code is thus a biochemical manifestation of the Hermetic code. And propelling from one dimension, which is one octave, to another causes a large amount of energy to arise, which is injected into the dimension below in order to fuel its manifestation. Here you can see point 1 now goes through the vortex and emerges as point 2 and 3. So for example, awareness will go through the vortex and emerge as wisdom and clarity, or sound and light and wave and particle, and I'll explain that to you in a little bit more in a moment. So the duality of the following stage manifests from a fixed unity in a higher dimension emerging within a lower one, and this is required for anchoring, existence, and integration of the other two, because they are not fundamentally separate from it, but can only appear in a dimension of lesser frequency. So when 2 and 3 are wrapped up in 1, they do not appear relatively. They stay inside that dimensional state. But in order for 1 to appear, it has to go through this dimensional vortex and appear in the shape of 2 and 3. A note or any sound is one such an explosion of energy. A color or shape is another such explosion of energy, and time is another. So let's look at this movement between dimensions through vortices. These aspects of the same fundamental essence appear differently within varying octaves of harmonic resonance. And here you'll see that there are 9, like I explained to you earlier, there are 3 principal layers of essence, blueprint, and manifest reality, but within each there are 3 categories of their own. So starting with awareness, awareness will contains clarity and wisdom, and but awareness appears as perception in its next layer, a blueprint layer, which also appears as light and sound. And then perception is also, awareness, perception are also this aspect of longitudinal waves and appear as particle and wave. So we've got these 9 principal layers. I mean, there are subdivisions of these as well, of course. And the 10th is the appearance as we know it at the bottom of this of these vortexes. So these are the main vortices. There are subdivisions, of course, within them. There aren't just three main vortices, but I just wanted to highlight this particular meaning here. So the further subdivisions, for example, awareness has its own triumvirate symmetry of being perfectly empty, as we discussed from the Hevajra Tantra, and at the same time perfectly luminous. And these qualities, these arise as qualities of wisdom from the emptiness and clarity from the luminosity. And when the perceptive quality of awareness looks at itself, this refractive, angled quality of perspective causes illusory sensory appearances to arise that emerge as sound and light. So now they're going into their next dimensional layer, whereas it is simply always the empty and luminous quality of awareness appearing from a different viewpoint. So whatever perception is looking at, it's just translating this empty and luminous quality of awareness, but it depends on the angle or perspective from which it looks at itself as awareness. And this never changes. This is all we're doing throughout the whole of our existence, is looking at ourself, looking at our pure self, and interpreting it from whichever angle or viewpoint we may be positioned at in that moment. So as perception, whose inherent quality of awareness pulses everywhere immediately as a longitudinal wave in the sense of being scalar, so as perception comprehends or interprets the play of sound and light arising within its perspective, its own quality of vibration interacts with the emerging wave of sound, thus collapsing it into a corresponding particle of light that emerges as atoms containing the essential 3 units of proton, electron, neutron. Excuse me. Here again, we have our 3, excuse me, our division of 3. We have proton, which refers to the awareness aspect, electron, which refers to the clarity or the light aspect, and we have the neutron, which refers to the sound or the wave aspect. The atoms then combine to make up objects. So this is how appearance arises according to perception's view of itself as awareness. Really very simple. We could actually describe existence as that in one sentence. Here we have a transition of non-Hertzian scalar waves, which is like pure awareness, into Hertzian transverse waves as entropy increases, bliss decreases, and solidity forms. So pixel by pixel, manifest existence, which is our appearance, thus spontaneously arises according to the state of our perceptive quality of awareness, which never actually moves, ever. Thus, as if looking into a mirror, we reflect our inner reality onto the space appearing around us, then interact with it and reinterpret what we see in a perpetual feedback loop, thus changing the manifest reality as our inner reality adjusts. Whatever we perceive will be mirrored back to us in this way. And we can never cheat the system because it's a law, yeah, that this reflection occurs in every moment of our existence. We're always mirroring our inner reality into the outer space. So the mirrors in Crystal of Time, there are 3 obvious symmetries at play here. And if you look at number 1 on this chart here, and you'll see that I put the mirror here in the center. Although they don't match perfectly in their mirrored colors, the shapes drawn within Crystal of Time, those at the top and bottom section, can be exactly folded onto themselves through the center of the golden circle, placing the mirror here in the center of the golden circle. Corresponding to the varying emerging aspects of awareness at different dimensional levels, so emptiness, luminosity, clarity, wisdom, light, sound, particle, wave, etc. Now we look at number 2 and we'll see the mirror is down the center here. The shapes drawn within Crystal of Time, those on each side corresponding to the energetic life force of the sentient being occupying the octave of harmonic resonance. Again, these are not exactly corresponding in color, but exactly in shape, so you can fold it over like this. And this mirror which exists around the picture. So there's one in the space around the picture like a crystal, clear and untainted, the mirror of your awareness arising within the appearance around you. So let's look at some basic points of time. Time does not occur within pure awareness, i.e. when perception is aligned with its inherent quality of awareness, then it collapses back into itself as the natural state of itself, a process which can be seen occurring both in the center where the golden circle is, and this is referring to Crystal of Time picture, and at the periphery of Crystal of Time where the wavy photos represent scalar energy. But as time comes into being alongside the perceptive capacity of awareness, so does awareness remain in a state of luminous emptiness, its inherent state, whose inherent qualities of wisdom and clarity are now interpreted by perception as sound and light, wave and particle, and ultimately as the entirety of manifestation throughout its multi-dimensional layers. Time changes speed depending on the vibration of perception, i.e. through the quality of our thinking. Now, this is really an important point. Time changes speed depending on the vibration of perception. So as we're thinking, so and the kind of thinking we have and the rate at which we're thinking is changing our speed of time. Time must therefore be understood qualitatively and not quantitatively. we plant a cause that arises as an effect, and time is that process, the distance between cause and effect. So this distance between, say, a thought or an impulse or a sensation or a vibration of the cause, so we think something and we plant that desire or that wish into our reality, or even a general mood like fear or envy or greed or love or joy or whatever. Can be positive, can be negative. So this distance between the cause and its results that may manifest within one or another event has a vortex shape, a spiral that coils between dimensions like a wormhole, which is apt for crystal of time as it's based on the serpentine analogy. So time is the distance between awareness and its perceptive capacity, not a physical distance, more like a degree of solidity or density, i.e. it is qualitative, not quantitative, and a distance that may be measured in terms of frequency. And that's really the main point here, that time is measured in terms of frequency. So here we've got crystal of time as a time pulse. Here, this picture on the left side, you'll see this is one just outline of crystal of time here, and like it's dividing itself up, like it's having kids. It becomes two, but two is not two because two is three. There's one here at the top. There's one here in the middle, which is the original one. There's one here, so there are three. And likewise, these also divide up to become seven, etc. And this can go on ad infinitum. So awareness, like a scalar longitudinal wave, is able to pulse itself everywhere simultaneously without ever straying from its original position. So this is the original position, and it's pulsing itself out from its original position without moving. So the movement of perception out of awareness, where it transitions from being in a state of scalar to transverse waves, is the dynamic action that hits the crystalline structure, causing it to vibrate and hence exist. If you remember, we looked at how piezoelectricity works, and a structure that contains piezoelectric force, like a crystal, that force can only come into being when it's activated in some way by hitting it in some way. So this movement of perception out of awareness, this movement of thought, is what is hitting an inherent crystalline structure, which is in our blueprint reality. Remember, our crystalline morphogenetic field of our blueprint reality is being hit by perception, causing it to vibrate and hence for existence to occur. So this is like the inner power source that is sustaining itself. So as long as perception is moving, so is existence existing in that sense. So the whole of crystal of time, constituting its base and the electromagnetic lines caused by its inherent crystalline structure, is a one-time pulse, an emanation of pure awareness, emerging from the golden circle in the center as a physical entity which operates on its own power supply, as I just described. Each pulse contains a massive division of its original harmonic again and again, whereby it replicates itself into an entire state of being. So this process that we looked at here can go on and on to create whatever is being held in the crystalline blueprint structure, which is being caused by the perception occurring. So as you perceive, so it becomes a reality in that sense. And a time pulse is orchestrated, i.e. it emerges according to its natural harmonic by the state of our perception or point of view, the shape of reality that we envisage. And because perception is not separate from awareness, it can also dissolve into no time as awareness. So crystal of time as a scalar antenna. Now this came out in the Bosnian conference in June 2019, when I was discussing with some of the conference participants after my talk. Actually, people were coming to me and asking me a lot of questions about crystal of time, and in fact, this is again from my notebook. This picture here is from my notebook at that time. That when I was discussing that perhaps crystal of time could be a scalar antenna. Now, just to finish up about the time pulse, a time pulse occurs each time perception interacts with its own definition of appearance. So each time it perceives itself, basically. It shifts and changes. It's a rhythm that creates an individual pulse that contributes to the whole. And this pulse can shift as quickly as your thought or your sensations shift. So the timing of the pulse can change at any split second in that sense. Channels to different realms appear through perception striking different frequencies of harmonic resonance, like explosions of energy through different dimensional gateways, emerging as notes, influencing, i.e. modifying the entire present moment of existence. So if we imagine that perception is like a pianist sitting at a piano with a lot of different octaves in front of it, and it can be playing the octave down at this end, and it can be playing the octave up at this end simultaneously, a low one and a high one, and a middle one, and it can jump around from octave to octave. So it's not like it has to go linear in a linear fashion from lower to higher or higher to lower. It can go here and there and here and there and here and there, and it can play as it thinks. It strikes the different frequencies, and so through striking those different frequencies, the time pulse changes and explodes through these different gateways, these different dimensional gateways, emerging as color, sound, light, notes, time, all these different relative aspects of our existence. So just like the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics based on the Egyptian cubic, as well as Hebrew and Sanskrit letters, these are all built like scalar antennas. And could this 3D version of crystal of time also be a scalar antenna? Now, strong scalar antennas can pick up complex waveforms of harmonics from the environment and create a localized field. A combination of these frequencies have different effects on biological creatures. And I don't know if you have heard of this fellow Ken Roller. He was actually at the Bosnian conference last year, and we sat and discussed this for a while. He has made quite some devices which affect the environment in this way. So he'll put out a kind of pyramid-shaped device which clears up weather systems or electrosmog or other aspects in the environment for quite some miles around where he places the object. So talking to him about this, and we were talking about the possibility of this 3D version of crystal of time being a scalar antenna, and I was asking him, so what do you suggest? How would I even go about making something like this? So he suggests that using non-metals that are better conductors of scalar energy and stones that are high in monoatomic elements, monoatomic elements being stable as single atoms, i.e. quartz, shungite, celerite, gold, silver, amethyst, which all have different frequencies, and then use 4 crystals which are higher in frequency on the outside and lower in frequency on the inside. Now, I am yet to do this, I have to say. It hasn't been my focus for the time being, but once I've been able to complete the movie and present it to you on May the 6th, then my next focus regarding this project will be to play around with crystal of time as a 3D device of some sort. And as you've been seeing, as I've been describing to you going along in these sessions, some different ideas of what it might be keep sort of popping out, popping out of the blue. So depending on which time cycle you belong to, i.e. how far your perceptive capacity has strayed from its original pure form of awareness, so do you physically emanate as a certain type of being, energetically existing within that bandwidth of frequency. I mean, you could be a human, or a dog, or an elephant, an insect, a swan, and even an invisible being. So depending on your frequency, so you will appear within the relative reality. So do different types of creatures exist and therefore maintain all layers of existence through their vibrational output of light and sound, creating a symphony of manifestation, waves of vibration that are being individually translated by the perceptive capacity of each and every one of those sentient beings into what appears collectively as a solid or less solid reality manifestation. Through its perceptive capacity, awareness is thus translated into various subtle and gross bodies that emanate as itself, around itself, within different dimensional states of itself. So we come back to this core of awareness, this indestructible state of emptiness fused with its own luminous quality, of clarity and wisdom, these qualities that are inherent to this state of awareness. And awareness, due to its, depending on its perceptive capacity, as it interprets itself, will appear within these different dimensional states of itself. So it's not like there's awareness and something else. Awareness is always in union with the, or it always is the manifestation in that sense. According to the shape of our conscious perception, interpreting the appearance around it, we individually refract the light into a blueprint aspect, whereby waves of sound emerge as corresponding particles of light that are not actually separate from each other within their ultimate state of awareness, but appear as such that when observed by perception at their subatomic level causes blueprint shapes of reality to form and emerge as a whole picture of colors, which are all frequencies of light, and tones, or frequencies of sound, a collective appearance of 3D shapes and objects, the coordinates of which are points of light with connecting waves of sound frequencies in between them. So time is also the speed that perception takes to translate a wave into its corresponding particle, and therefore to translate it into an appearance through stamping the pictures together based on memory of blueprint shapes. Now, this is a very important aspect, actually, of this time cycle. This is, I'm going to refer to this later on in the session as well, but at this point, I just want to present it to you. So let's look at this, behind the picture, the space behind this cycle as an empty luminous space. And so from that empty luminous space, a point here at number 1 emerges. This is the particle appearing from that process of sound and light and becoming a particle, etc. I explained to you earlier. So then if there are two particles, there is a wave between them, creating a line, and this forms number 2 in the time cycle. So now, instead of just a point, we have a line. Now, when this line, one point, bends round on itself and joins, this line joins itself, the point number 1 joins that point there, it becomes a circle. And this is like the transition between a linear way of thinking. So time goes from past to present to future. Now, when perception sees itself in a different sense, rather than seeing itself in this linear progression of past, present, future, it now sees beyond that in the present moment, as in everything is existing within this moment of now. Now, as soon as we have a circle, there's a center. There's always, as soon as we have any shape, a center point appears, and the power of the shape is in its center. So the circumference will naturally seek its central point and becomes a spiral. At point number 4 becomes a spiral. And by virtue of becoming a spiral one way, there will always be an anti-spin, as there's a manifest reality and a non-manifest reality occurring. Now, when this particular shape is looked at from another angle, it becomes a toroidal shape. Now here we have self-reference. We have this, it comes out and goes back in on itself, and eventually collapses back into itself as a point. So we've gone full circle here, and then the point will dissolve back into its empty, luminous space. So here's a time cycle emerging out of space and returning back into its empty, luminous quality again. And within the crystal of time, we've got this time harmonic. So at the base of crystal of time, the 4 element pincer-shaped arms drawn in golden ratio are virtual figures of 8. You see these here, these figures of 8. And remember, I described to you in the other session that I created these out of, I created these in order to have this idea of infinity inside the picture, as well as to represent the elements in the picture, as well as to create the Fibonacci spiral and the golden ratio in the picture. But in this sense, I want you to look at them as figures of 8. So as 2D, they look like 3 shapes. So here we have 3 shapes, 3 infinity shapes next to each other, whereby 2 intersect and they look like this. And then a third is placed on top and they look like this. So ever spiraling to eternity, like a knot, an eternal knot in 2 dimensions. As 3D, these shapes here become 3 circles. And when 2 intersect, they look like this, and they emerge as waves of resonance in 3D. But in 4 dimension, they appear as a spiraling tunnel of resonance. So this all depends on how perception is viewing the same thing. In one sense, from a 2-dimensional perspective, they look like the infinity shapes. And then from a 3D perception, they look like circles. And from a 4th dimension, they look like a spiraling tunnel. So each dimension performs its function in the holistic sense of it all, but everything, we come back to the same point again and again, everything depends on your perspective, i.e. the capacity of your perception to interpret the clarity, the light and particle, the clarity being the light and the particle, and the wisdom being the sound and the wave of the essential space around you. So here's one quite wacky theory that I quite like to talk about. And in fact, this got us really talking at the Bosnian conference this last year in June 2019. So this spiraling time tunnel that exists once you see things from a 4th dimension perspective, and this is one theory on how time travel could emerge. Now, of course, there are many, many ways to look at this, because it depends on whether you are looking at the universe from a presentist point of view, i.e. everything exists now, therefore there is no past and there is no future. It is just manifesting right now. Or whether you're looking at it in terms of there being a block universe, as physicists are calling it, a block universe being a place where every time exists within one huge space. So you could go to the past, you could go to the future, and it has its own boundaries. This block universe has its own boundaries, etc. So anyway, discarding all these things, because we could talk about this for one session in itself, I'm just going to put forward this one one theory. So since the entire universe of existence operates in octaves of harmonic resonance, and each coordinate of space-time occupies and holds a different frequency within that range, when you want to travel there, theoretically, you simply need to tune your own frequency to that coordinate. This may be operated by the control center of your mind, using the tool of your DNA. If you remember rightly, we've discussed this, both of which are micro versions of the universal harmonic resonance. So the mind is one octave of harmonic resonance. The DNA is an octave of harmonic resonance. So in fact, the mind is spanning all octaves of harmonic resonance, and DNA is part of the manifestation of that harmonic resonance, about all these fields of harmonic resonance that are spanning existence. So again, we have to look at resonance within resonance at this point. So you would then dematerialize your gross body by causing the otherwise continuing circular electron spin of each of your atoms to vortex into the nucleus of each of your cells, and a Hertzian to non-Hertzian wave process, which I showed you last time from Dan Winter's work, the pine cones kissing noses, where the vortices come into the center and meet in the center, and therefore pass through dematerialized space until you hit the frequency where you set the coordinates to, whereupon you rematerialize into a body that resonates with the vibration of that particular frequency. And theoretically, to return, you would do the opposite. Each location in the universe has a different frequency coordinate, but the fractal gradient between dimensions, so that means in one dimension there's a coordinate, in one octave of harmonic resonance there's a coordinate, and then in another octave of harmonic resonance there's another coordinate, but these are existing in different dimensions. So the fractal gradient is actually like a line between different coordinates in different dimensional spaces. So here I put meaning the distance between coordinates of octaves of harmonic resonance existing within different dimensional states. So this will provide the means of achieving the destination. Now, anything appearing, as in light, in the gross and subtle realms is bound by vibration, which is sound, and by virtue of their presence within space as a material or spiritual body made up of the 5 elements at different levels of subtlety, will change the overall vibrational structure of it, space. So this means that if we were to transition between one dimensional state and another dimensional state, of course, the actual passing between one to another, the actual existence, our existence in one or another dimensional state would have an effect on the whole of reality. If you want to look at the most realistic, actually the most realistic of this particular, the most realistic time tunnel that we do go through is at our death. So this is in fact exactly what happens in the dying process. Each of our cells, the electron spin in each of the cells it stops working, and we ourselves vortex into a different dimensional state of being. If we were to do it yogi style, then or really like super yogi style, then we could also dematerialize our body and attain something called the rainbow body, where the entire body would dissolve at our death. So in this case, the circular electron spin of each of the atoms would vortex into their nucleus and dissolve into light in that sense. So as we move lifetime to lifetime, we are in a sense time traveling. And who's to say that we don't die? We appear in a different dimensional state of reality, and then we come back into the physical realm, but say in the year 1245 or 50 AD. I mean, who's to say that we don't come back at a different point in space, not necessarily in the future, but also in the past? You know, this is a question mark hanging over this one. Now, ironically, as I was preparing this talk during the last week, I saw on Facebook, Sam Osmanagic has posted that they're building no other than a time machine, and here is the digger at work, in the Ravni Park in Bosnia. And look, you'll see, I have no idea about any of this. I don't know what they're creating, but they've got all these pillars in this background area with this concrete base. So I'm going to be intrigued to find out what this time machine in the Ravni Park is all about, because there's a lot of talk about time traveling and portals into different dimensions and things like that in Bosnia. So let's see what this is all about in a future date. So I went back to Dan Winter's work to find out how this relationship between the harmonic resonance of our DNA and mind may occur. And I was brought back to the place where pine cones kiss noses, this, as I've described to you before, at the center of vorticity, where transformation takes place between Hertzian to non-Hertzian waves. So let's look at this from a wider angle. So our sound harmonics, which are our emotions coming from the heart, cause a voltage, an ECG, that causes braiding in the DNA. Now, braiding in the DNA, if you look at this picture on the right, means this. This is what Dan means by the braiding. So the right emotion, i.e., bliss, causes the right, or joy, this extreme sense of well-being, blissful, joyful, love, causes the right wavelength embedding that causes the right sound wave and voltage to emerge, that causes the waves to converge at the center of the X, and here you see the X here, inside the braiding of DNA. So you've got the braiding of DNA that comes out in this X shape here, and to squirt out this, like an implosion, this, you see the shape is like a golden ratio. It is a golden ratio shape. So to squirt out like an implosion, that, and this is what causes that tingly feeling that comes with bliss. And we get this, we also sometimes get these goosebumps. You know, this is a way of showing that this is occurring within our DNA. As sound and voltage are mechanics for creating a sonic ponytail, this is the sonic ponytail here, which affects the DNA. Through analyzing sound harmonics coming from the heart versus the voltage, we find that the space between harmonics is in the golden mean ratio, generating a coherent cascading within the heart. So mechanically, the sounds of your heart make a Fibonacci sequence, golden ratio at the moment of feeling love or feeling compassion. This golden ratio pattern allows the rest of the voltage donuts to converge around the heart. Donuts mean this sort of toroidal movement. The heartbeat electrically comes from a 3D revolving spiral that continuously redimples or turns itself inside out, reinserts itself, self-re-enters, and self-refers. So you can see this going on in this picture here. There's this continuous self-reference going on. This is how you create the braid potentiality in your DNA based on phonon waves, sound waves coming from your heart, and based on your mind or your perception, creating this feeling of bliss or joy or love or compassion, these very high qualities. This causes this, this special sequence to occur inside your DNA. So the ratio of donuts based on golden ratio harmonics become very ordered and nested at the moment of bliss, whereby the interval between harmonics is golden ratio, and this is how it should be. This causes the perfect branching, perfect embedding, perfect nesting, waves with perfect spacing according to golden ratio. And for embedding, you need this perfect shape. With bliss, this occurs perfectly, becoming self-similar, and is the principle of fractality. So therefore, if you take responsibility for your emotions, you are fabricating the shape of the magnetic field, which is your world. And we've described that in other terms earlier on. So what we're talking about here is the ability of a field effect to become self-aware, whereby the golden mean spiral is the only way it can refer to itself non-destructively. Otherwise, self-reference can also be destructive if it's not, if it doesn't occur in this golden mean ratio, in the sense that the energy will leak and you'll lose a lot of energy in a sense. The golden mean spiral, which is caused through this feeling of love and compassion and bliss and joy, etc., this will only create this golden mean spiral, which doesn't leak any of the energy out of itself. So it continues to use its self-perpetuate its energy, which creates life force ultimately. So the magnetic fields become self-organizing when they emerge from chaos by becoming perfectly fractal. The golden mean ratio is a solution of perfect branching and embedding may be the solution of fractality. To become self-similar or fractal electrically may be the solution to how field effects become self-aware, because they become able to respond to so many harmonics at once. You've got all these harmonics happening all the time, and these have to be arranged in a way that becomes tangible to perception, to our otherwise it would be completely chaotic to have all these harmonics existing at the same time. They have to kind of embed within each other, nest within each other. Otherwise, for example, you can't get an infinite number of harmonics to rest at one point unless they're knitted by phi. And here Dan uses a very nice play on words, i.e. phi knit, which equals infinite. So this is a nice way to describe this point. The golden mean phi spiral solves the problem of separateness, as there is no inside and no outside as such. The outside becomes the inside, becomes the outside, becomes the inside, becomes the outside, and it just continues. The power remains within its own, it remains self-contained, and the energy doesn't leak in that sense. So the golden mean spiral, perfect self-reference, perfect self-embedding, provides a spinning path to the center, perfect compression, followed by this squirting effect in golden ratio proportions that I showed you in the other picture. So here, in this picture on the right, this is a perfect fractal. You get a cup, and that cup will now expand and become another cup. So it's going round and around and around and around. So you get a cup within a cup within a cup, which is an infinite fractal, and how self-embedding happens in the blood, in fact. If you lose the ability to self-implode in your heart, then you'll no longer have the ability to create bliss and this reaction in the DNA. Consciousness is also fractal too. So here we've discussed quite a lot of different levels of fractality. Now, what is a standing wave? Here in Crystal of Time, well, first of all, a standing wave is also called a stationary wave, is a combination of two waves. So you see this picture on the right, one wave and two waves, moving in opposite directions along the same medium, whereby each have the same amplitude and frequency. It allows harmonics to be identified. So the phenomenon is the result of interference, that is, when waves are superimposed, their energies are either added together or cancelled out. So in Crystal of Time, we've also got this similar two waves are passing through the Crystal of Time, one from each end of it, where the two pyramid crystals cap it. So we've got one like this and another one, two like this. So therefore, it may be said that there is a standing wave here with nodes and antinodes along its main crossing points. And this describes, this shows the harmonics of Crystal of Time. The waveform remains stationary and nodes and antinodes are formed alternately. The points where displacement is zero are called nodes, and the points where the displacement is maximum are called antinodes. Pressure changes are maximum at nodes and minimum at antinodes. Now, fractal, coming back to fractality, fractal shells, we saw this, the different nesting and embedding of fractals are formed by opposing spirals, creating standing waves. We saw this, this effect like this. The spiral may form a closed system, which is negative, and can entrap time in an evolutionary process, which is a stable standing wave. Now, this is an important point, coming back to this idea of block universe and this timeline of past, present to future. Time becomes trapped in an evolutionary process. So when looking at it from one perspective, it is trapped in an evolutionary process. But when looking at it from another perspective, if perception stands in its pure state of awareness, it will see that everything is immediately present. So neither the block universe theory or the presentist theory, one is right and one is wrong in that sense. They are both right because it depends on your perspective. It's as simple, as simple as that. So a great amount of power is running between these two ends of crystal of time, which contains an octave of harmonic resonance within itself. And also it shows these harmonics within it. The standing wave shows the harmonics within it. Crystal of time is also potentially a capacitor whose power is amplified by the crystals running along its center and at both ends of it. So let's take this on and back into the morphogenetic field aspect that we've also started talking about earlier. So a scalar wave is a transharmonic standing wave array that radiates out of a static point of sound light vibration within the morphogenetic field. So this is another aspect of where standing waves may be seen. The expression of their movement is created through flashing on, which is light, and flashing off, which is sound, of scalar wave points. So scalar waves represent static points of eternal fission, fusion that radiate from the fabric of the morphogenetic field. And remember, the morphogenetic field is our crystalline blueprint reality. So once perception has escaped from its pure state of awareness and it's now looking and self-referring to itself as something separate, it's now creating a blueprint reality which is going to manifest in a solid way. So all forms of consciousness and matter hold a morphogenetic form, hold an imprint consisting of a crystalline electrotonal energetic substance arranged in specific frequency patterns. These scalar waves are vertical points comprised of conscious energy. Conscious energy means they are containing perception, awareness, yeah? Fixed points of light sound. Remember, awareness divides itself into wisdom and clarity. The wisdom is the sound aspect, the clarity is the light aspect. Sequentially threaded together within the cosmic fabric of the morphogenetic field. Every cell, organ system in our physical body, as well as our entire physical body, is encompassed and surrounded by its own individual morphogenetic field encryption pattern. So in order to create a change within any part of our body, we need to be able to connect, communicate, and reprogram the morphogenetic field encryption pattern of our immune system. So this again, it starts with the mind. It starts with our perception. It starts with awareness, ultimately. And so we do have a connection through different harmonics, through different octaves of harmonic resonance with the different layers of our reality, whether they be emerging as physical or as blueprint or as spiritual. We have the ability to connect with all these different octaves of harmonic resonance. So resonance at the Bosnian pyramid site, and here we come back to some things we've also touched on in the past. The 28 kilohertz electromagnetic energy beam emerging from the pyramid of the sun would require a constant power source of at least 10 kilowatts. And we already talked about the source of this vibrational energy as potentially being from the geological configuration of an iron plate, underground water, and cavities in the earth, which are deeply embedded underneath the pyramid of the sun. We also talked about the possibility of it deriving its energy from the pyramid's ultrasonic energy waves and their resonance with the quartzite in the conglomerate that makes up the concrete blocks on the pyramid. But what could be the power source that excites the quartzite resonance? You know, we're on a trail here. Everything needs to be powered in some way. Now, it's been suggested that it could be natural seismic noise in the earth arising from movement of the earth's tectonic plates and ongoing mini seismic events. Seismic studies have found that the region around the pyramids, the Bosnian pyramids, is unusually quiet. And it's been suggested that maybe the pyramid is acting as a seismic energy accumulator that dampens earthquake activity in its vicinity. Or this energy may be coming from the 7.83 Hertz Schumann electromagnetic resonance, even though this is nowhere near the pyramid of the sun's 28 kilohertz resonance. Interestingly, scientists have measured a 7.8 Hertz signal in the electromagnetic signature coming from the pyramid of the sun. So it may be tied into the resonance phenomena taking place there. However, to develop a proper understanding of this, research needs to be carried out to measure the actual speed of sound in the pyramid's concrete slabs. These are the blocks which are covering the pyramid of the sun. The resonant characteristics of the quartzite found in the concrete and the natural conglomerate layer. Because if you remember rightly, there's quartz and quartzite present in the concrete blocks on the pyramid of the sun, but also in the natural conglomerate found for kilometers around in the landscape around the pyramid complex. So resonance in the Ravne tunnels, and I'm going to quote here a fellow Pablo de Bertolis from the Department of Medical Sciences at the University of Trieste. The resonance phenomenon in the Ravne tunnels in Bosnia is an unusual but unknown phenomenon. In our research, we demonstrated that a very strong response at 71.57 Hertz, that's really high, when a singer sings inside the tunnel. Our thesis is that this structure was also used for rituals and prayers because the resonance of these frequencies can have a direct effect on the human body in the same way as was found in the ancient Neolithic temples of southern England. And on a different count, hydrophone recordings were conducted by another group in the water pools within the Ravne tunnels, because I think I've mentioned in the past, there's quite a lot of water present in the Ravne tunnels, and this water has an extremely high quality of, what is present in the water is has an extremely high healing effect. So these hydrophone recordings conducted by another group in the water pools within the Ravne tunnel showed the presence of ultrasound oscillations at 24 kilohertz and 1 octave up at 48 kilohertz, whose amplitudes changed in a rhythmic manner. A 38 kilohertz frequency also appeared erratically. So interestingly, this is 14 kilohertz higher than the 24 kilohertz frequency, a different frequency that is half of the 24 kilohertz frequency report coming from the pyramid of the sun. So we can see that there are different harmonics, different octaves of harmonic resonance playing out in different aspects of the pyramid complex. So in electrical sciences, harmonic resonance is a phenomenon that amplifies electricity. If steps are not taken, for example, in a factory or a power plant that has fuses and limiting capacitors to nix out the natural harmonic hums that occur, it can blow those fuses by overloading the power. Tesla experimented with harmonic resonance and magnifying the natural energy of the earth itself in this way. So one of the runic stones here below This is not the one with the famous quote on it, but this is another one. One of the runic stones found in the Ravni tunnels has an outline of what a harmonic wave looks like. This may have been to note which frequency that particular level was constructed to produce while they were building it. So you see here is this shows this harmonic, and here you can see like a picture of each level of higher harmonic divides into one more added wave. Now I've got a video to play here.
Museum. When we came here, it was completely covered all the way to the top. And then we discovered those carvings. It's like a combination of the geometry with some letters, M or H, A or arrows, or B, P, and so on, etc.
So this is the runic stone that shows the famous. So I'll describe that to you. Can you hear me again? Hey.
Yes, I do. I mute myself, so my response time is slower. Sorry.
Could you hear the video? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's good. So what we just saw there was the runic stone that has the saying on it: "The gateway is closed," etc., etc., that I've described to you in the past. And these are an interpretation of the runic symbols, which are, in fact, they discovered that there's only one language today. There's a sort of prototype Hungarian language that from which they can understand runes from, but I don't know so much about it. But I know it has something connected. There's something connected to the Hungarian language. So that's the stone. Last time you asked me if I could show you the stone. That's present inside the actual Ravni tunnels.
Okay, thanks.
Now here, so now I came back from this trip to Bosnia and Canada. I came back to India, and while I was away, I had picked up my book, The Living Pyramid, that I had published back in 2018, and I had some copies of it in London, and I was looking at it on my way back, and I found some typos in it, and I really annoyed by these small mistakes here and there. You know, a number of them. There were like 3 or 4 typos. So I thought, when I get back to India, because this book is actually published by Amazon, it's not. I haven't got thousands of print copies of it. It's printed as it's required. As people order it, then it's printed at that point. In that sense, I could simply change these, or you know, I could change the errors in the original text and re-upload the file into the Amazon storage. So I thought when I get back to India, I'll do that. But you know how it is. I started reading, and I ended up doing a whole proof of the entire book, which turned out to be an incredible process, because I discovered something which I'd written inside the book, which I'd kind of missed the importance of it at the point that I was writing it. I mean, I wrote it myself, but I hadn't really digested it yet. And so this time cycle, which I've just described to you, it's kind of describing this time cycle, but taking it a step further. So let's look at what I found. I found this these sentences in particular. So before these paragraphs, I've described this the process of this time cycle. So a point becomes a line, becomes a circle, becomes a spiral, which has an anti-spin, becomes a toroid, and dissolves back to a point again. I talked about this on the previous page. But then I write, when our impression of these tiny points of seemingly individual moments situated upon a long line of life gliding along a one-way track time frame is seen from another dimensional angle within perception, it appears as an immortal moment. If you count each instant as a whole complete particle of time, mark a point on it where it starts. This will also be the end of the instant too, as it completes its moment of being. Yet once a line has been bent into a circle through a shift in perception, anywhere on the whole circle of all these instances could mark the start and anywhere could mark the end, so there is no longer any definition between one and another instant. One circle, in this sense, is exponentially all circles. Now this is really getting to the point. Here, each of the tiny circles making up the linear line are now situated upon the circumference of a new circle, same moments as before, but now neither representing a past, future, nor present time scale. So is this larger circle made up of circular instances also situated as one tiny circle upon the circumference of a larger circle, and so it goes on infinitely, reflecting itself onto higher and lower dimensional states. Now, this got me thinking. So I jotted down 12 points here, 12 points to represent the 12 marks on where the numbers on a clock go, and also because each circle is representing one octave of harmonic resonance, which is 12 semi-intervals. Yeah, in one octave you have 8 whole tones, and in one octave you have 12 semitones. So each circle contains another 12 smaller circles. So here you'll see there's a circle, and in this little circle there should be 12, like here, 12 more circles, and again in each of these circles are 12 more circles, and again in each of those tiny little circles are 12 more circles, and this goes on and on and on. So each circle contains another 12 smaller circles, as well as being contained within another larger circle as one of the 12 circles on that. All these circles within circles within circles cause resonance and create an ultimate fractal. These are all octaves within octaves within octaves within octaves. So now I'm sitting with this idea and thinking, what do I, where do I take this? So I go back to Crystal of Time. So Crystal of Time also describes the inner channels of the body of bliss, the perfect light body of the human being, cascading with a melody of harmonic resonance in golden ratio. And we've already seen from Dan Winter's work that this is what is required. Bliss is required in order to create this perfect embedding of heart electronics or heart vibrations, so that we don't leak our life force or leak the energy out. This creates a perfect process. So when coupled with another set of intricate shapes inserted inside the golden circle at its center, so we're talking about the Crystal of Time here, the golden circle at the center of Crystal of Time, which is like its heart, the vortex transforming the Hertzian transverse waves in Crystal of Time to non-Hertzian scalar waves, and I showed you that picture last time, and this occurs inside the golden circle, would thus join the two, causing them not to be separate from each other, i.e. both are required to activate different levels of manifestation. What I mean by two here are inside the golden circle of Crystal of Time should be another whole complex pattern of shapes, which are representing like the heart of Crystal of Time. So Crystal of Time is like one octave of harmonic resonance, which is an example of all octaves of harmonic resonance in the sense of as above, so below. And this is what should be described inside the golden circle at the center of Crystal of Time. So now I'm figuring out how to do the circles within circles within circles pattern. So here's the golden circle, and around the golden circle in the center of Crystal of Time are 12 crystals. 12 crystals are actually situated. I already positioned those there in Crystal of Time. You know, at the time I was doing that, I didn't really know why I was doing it. And often when I'm working, I'm working through intuition. And it just seemed like it needed these 12 crystals around this golden center, but now it's starting to become clear why. When we look here, we can see that the crystals that are laid out down the center of crystal of time, there are 8 of them, which is like 1 octave of harmonic resonance in 8 tones, 8 full tones. And you can see here this pattern of the these cones coming together into the center, which are like Dan Winter's pinecone kissing noses, which cause the transformation of the Hertzian to non-Hertzian wave patterns, the spiral and its anti-spin, so to speak. So here we also have 12, in fact, I should have put a picture of crystal of time here, then you would have been able to see what this refers to. I'll take you back to a picture in a minute and then show you what I mean. So there are 12 of these points where the Fibonacci spiral goes into its, at the end of these pincer-shaped arms, where the Fibonacci spiral comes to a point like little hooks. There are 12 of these. And these are representing 1 octave of harmonic resonance as 12 semi-intervals. So in a sense, we've got this pattern already embedded in crystal of time of 8 whole tones and 12 semitones. So now the shape, the name, the shapes of the circles within circles, and the picture, the indestructible drop, doorway to infinity, which is the name of this new picture, emerges. So now I need to decide how to lay out this new shape that I'd already envisioned as circles, a circles within circles pattern. It wasn't so hard, but it wasn't so easy because there were quite a few considerations at this point. And how many circles, for example, to lay down. So ironically, and this is, as I said before, I'm always watching out what's going on at the same time as things arise. So at the same time as I was starting to develop this picture, I was also working on another project regarding the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And in the process of expanding an outline I already had for the development of a mobile phone game based on the book. And while I was developing a series of mini games based on the meaning of the 5 elements and their complementary 5 mental aspects, I could see how this related to the pattern I was developing. I already had this idea of the number 12 circles within 12, within 12, within 12. But how many times was I going to replicate this? And it seemed obvious that it should be at least 5 times. Now, nonetheless, that 5 times 12 equals 60. And of course, 60 is very, very pertinent to time. We have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. And then, for example, in the Chinese calendar, there are 60 years in a cycle, and there are 12 different animals, and there are 5 different elements. So, you know, there were a lot of things jumping out with these numbers related to time. 12, also 12 months in a year, 12 different astrological signs, etc., etc. You know, we could talk about this for a while. So I started to look at emanating the 5 elements in golden ratio patterns and interrelating them with the 5 mental aspects, using colors attributed to each aspect from the highest yogic tantras of Tibetan Buddhism, and the common denominator, using the common denominator of space as the first element that holds each of the other 4 elements within it. So since space and with it time appears when perception breaks its inherent alignment with awareness, not its inherent union with it, that's always there, space seemed like the apt pivotal point. So space, and on top of the space, we have 12 circles of earth. So getting larger in golden, getting smaller in golden ratio proportion. We've got space to wind, to fire, to water, to earth. And again, getting larger in golden ratio proportion. from the earth, which is on top of the space, we have water, fire, wind, earth. And you'll see they increase in levels of solidity and decrease in levels of solidity. So we have 9 layers of harmonic resonance here. And remember, I talked about the importance of the number 9 when I was talking about Naga beings with you in our second session. So this is how I jotted down how it should look. So we would have 9 layers of circles within one circle. So one circle means this whole circle. And 9 layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the one, so the one whole circle and the 12 circles within it expand to 13 dimensional layers. So this large circle here is one of another, and just imagine this huge, huge circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I can't even show it, it'd be too big. This one large circle is also one of 12 circles in a larger circle that becomes the 13th. And coming back to another art piece of mine from 2005 that I also showed you earlier on, the Circle of Immortality, again referring to time, referring to perception, and how perception strays from its quality of awareness. Here, there are also 13 levels mirrored up, 13 levels going up and then mirrored within the mirror, 13 levels going inside the mirror. Now coming back to pi, the diameter of the circle times pi is the length of its circumference, and I chose the size of the diameters of the circle in increments of golden ratio, i.e. 1.618 times the preceding one. And although I can't show you a finished version of it yet with all the photos added, which I'm currently doing, the smallest circle, which will be a photo in the picture, which sits on the smallest circle, which is yellow, starts at 0.5 centimeters. So it's tiny. That's the diameter is half a centimeter wide. The next is 0.85 centimeters and the following 1.4 centimeters. So you can see it goes up in increments. The diameters are in increments of golden ratio 1.618. So this is what the base of the new picture, Indestructible Dropped All the Way to Infinity, looks like. Now, what I'm talking about here, you see this little yellow circle here. On top of that are 12 photos of half a centimeter each. So you see here we have the yellow circle, the white circle, the red circle, the green circle, then the blue circle, then on top of the blue circle are the yellow circles. Then on top of that is again this series of white circles, and then on top of this is a series of red circles, and then we have a series, and it's difficult to actually see where the train goes around this. There are 12 green circles, and then finally there are 12 yellow circles on the top. So now what I'm doing, now there are 9 layers of circles, but as I'm adding photographs onto 4 more layers, the yellow, the white, the red, and the green, there will eventually be 13 levels, just like the Circle of Immortality art piece. There will be 13 dimensional layers existing within this picture. So this is a work in progress as we speak. I am now cutting up in fact, I've stuck the circles on the the photos, on the little yellow pictures, little yellow circles. I've now cut up all the circular photos to stick on the little white circles, and I'm going to be sticking those down this week. And I've started cutting up the photos to go on the red circles, which I'll also be doing in these days as well. So enter another subject which is not irrelevant. In fact, it's very relevant to our topic here, because now this new picture emerges we've got this, I found out also, a friend sent me a link to this information about the E8 and quasi-crystals, which actually I didn't know about. But again, everything is happening so with such synchronicity that, you know, I have to believe that it's part of the process. So what is E8? So let's look at it from the beginning. Crystals have a periodic pattern, i.e. like a checkerboard is a 2D periodic pattern. If you extend it infinitely, that checkerboard that is, the same pattern will continue forever. A 3D crystal, so here, you see here, a 3D crystal structure is a cubic lattice. So how do you get a quasi-crystal? If you project this 3D lattice onto a 2D surface, you create a shadow which has a pattern that is not periodic. It also isn't random. This aperiodic pattern is called a quasi-crystal. A quasi-crystal in a particular dimension is a projection of a crystal in a higher dimension. So this is the important point. An E8 lattice is an 8-dimensional crystal. When it's projected at a specific irrational angle from 8D to 4D, we see this here, 8D to 4D, then to 3D, like a lower dimensional shadow of E8, it forms a theorized fundamental substructure of space-time. The 3D quasi-crystal is a language, a finite set of geometric letters, a code composed of symbols with rules on how to arrange them, which allows you to express information or reality itself. We cannot measure these higher dimensions because they're way too small to see. However, the same information is encoded into the 3D quasi-crystal language, so we don't need to see the higher dimensions to get that information. All the information of E8 exists in its shadow. One can recover the information of the E8 lattice from the lower dimensional quasi-crystal. So this is the main point here. So here is an E8 crystal, the theorized fundamental substructure of space-time. And another picture of an E8 crystal, which reminded me of something, because then I added up the numbers here and it came to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And like, wow, 12, here we have 12 circles, and this idea of this, although they're concentric circles, we've got 12 circles, 12 circles. So at this point, because I'm also explaining the harmonics through golden ratio patterns within the new picture, the indestructible drop doorway to infinity, this is, it may be said that this new picture is pertaining really to the essential nature of the harmonic resonance, and has something, and is connected in some way to the substructure of reality. So this picture is now very apt, and it's the right thing to be embedded into the heart of the crystal of time. This is the power of the crystal of time. This is what empowers it. This is what causes it to exist. This is like its internal battery, so to speak. So I knew, I now knew that this was the shape that I needed to build the movie with. So remember I told you before, I'd already explored editing the visuals, and I'd looked at the structure as an octave of harmonic resonance, etc., etc. So I was kind of on the way, but what I needed was to embed octaves of harmonic resonance within each other, like this perfect fractal embedding that Dan describes in the instance of the heart, the voltage of the sound harmonics of the heart. So I needed to embed this as the heart of crystal of time, and also the structure that I would use, the shape that I would use to create the movie. So crystal of time is the shape for the movie, but it's got another section to it. So now, as I'm creating the movie, for the Bosnian pyramid complex, the main structure of it will be this new picture, the indestructible drop, doorway to infinity, with the crystal of time laid upon it, so to speak. So that's what we're going to, that's where we're going to go next time. We're going to discuss how I transform this interpretation I've been describing to you of the Bosnian pyramids into a film. There are some other points which have emerged as well, some more information, like I discussed earlier, some very, very interesting information about the Hermetic Code and the power of the pyramid on our electrical system. So I'm going to discuss that with you next time too. But otherwise, we're heading towards the film now, and the next session will be, as I said, this description of how I'm transforming this interpretation into of the Bosnian pyramids into a film. And then after that, we're going to see the film itself. So I'm going to leave you with that today, and thank you very much for attending, and see you next time.